Here in the Western world, we are really, really disconnected from our bodies, painfully so. We are disconnected from our bodies on purpose. We are made to believe that the ultimate source of knowledge is through cognition. It is my body and it is through movement that I have learned the most about the world. Grief forced me to come back into my body. Boy, oh boy, did it require that I be present with the experiences and the sensations and the feelings that exist within my body. Growing up, my dad always took me and my sisters to go get massages. My dad was he was not a typical Nigerian. We like smudged the house. We did holistic medicine. We would go see the Chinese medicine doctors. And part of that holistic health included going to get massages. So it was always part of my practice to get some body work done. We also went to the chiropractor. And I know chiropractic care is controversial to some. That's not what, this is just not the space for that. And truthfully, um, this is more just me offering the things that have helped me. But as a kid, we would go to the chiropractor. So after my dad transitioned, um, I started my career as a management consultant. And if y'all know anything about consulting, you know how demanding that job is. So I'm 6 months post funeral for my dad, starting this job. And I was just experiencing chronic pain all the time. My neck felt like it was on fire. My shoulders felt like they were on fire. My spine felt like it was on fire all the time. And it's because my body was holding on to the experiences of grief, and because I didn't have knowledge or space to release it. So I started going to the chiropractor. So 7 a.m. before I would go into work, I would go in for my adjustment. I was going 3 times a week to really create spaciousness in my spine. Like, you would look at my x-rays and you would think that I was a sedentary 75-year-old man. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I was pretty active, was going to the gym after work. Like, I had my routine down. Then COVID. I feel like everyone has a then COVID story. And one of my colleagues at the time, one of my dear friends, introduced me to a 30-day challenge by Yoga with Adriene. And that is when my movement practice really started to take shape. I thought yoga was going to be a workout alternative. Oh, was I wrong? I was completely unaware of the healing and transformation that was to occur from that point forward. I started tuning into my body, noticing where I was holding tightness, and a lot of the tightness that I carried was in my hips, my shoulders, my neck. So even when we were in lockdown and I wasn't able to go to the chiropractor anymore, I think the time that I had been going created enough spaciousness that now yoga could take over. So many emotions came up. The number of times that I would be doing like a child's pose or pigeon, or rather half pigeon, and I would just start crying because I was now giving space for that stagnant energy, for those heavy emotions to be moved out, to be guided out of my body, to be processed. But it didn't stop with yoga. I needed to dance. I felt so moved, no pun intended, um, to twirl my hips around, to shake what my mama gave me, to be high energy and sweat some of these emotions out. And in this process of moving my body, actually that I can't even say that's everything, right? There's the yoga, there is the dance. I started practicing Tai Chi, which helps move things energetically. Being out in nature. Oh, I'm such a nature girly and going for my morning walks. All of that gave space for all of that gave space for emotions to come up, for memories to resurface, for questions to sit. And as I moved through my career and moved through different roles and moved through different relationships and friendships and other connections, I leaned on my movement practice to help me make sense of the changes that were happening in my life. And a lot of these changes were rooted in the fact that I was also very deeply present with grief. Grief showed up in all of it. The standard that I had for the ways that I engage with people and the standards that I have for people who engage with me at a very different level, because grief taught me how short life is. But it was through moving through those experiences in my body that I was able to come to clarity and a place of grounding to understand that. I also want to mention movement as it relates to travel. The semester after my mom passed away, I studied abroad in Copenhagen. And I kept going back and forth about whether it was a good idea for me to be so far away from my community and my network when I was in the throes of grief. But being able to travel so freely was healing in ways that years later I'm still piecing together and processing. Travel for me is spiritual. Movement across these alleged borders and connecting with the dance practices and the community practices of those spaces helps create a container through which I can now analyze and be with grief, loss, joy, because they go together. We'll talk about that another time, though. We sit in desks all day. So the emotions of the heart, the heaviest emotions of the heart, sink down and sit in our hips. The space where we create life, where our creativity is cultivated. So, with these heavy emotions sitting there, how can we be most expressive of our truest self if that creative life force is now wrapped up and entangled with grief, loss, pain, hopelessness, despair? Insert the heavy emotions that are very present in this current moment of our collective, within our collective. My invitation to you would be to consider what movement means to you. How do you stay present with your body? And I know that's hard because we have been conditioned out of feeling things in our body. So when we do feel it, we tend to back off and run away. I don't know about all that. I can't do that. But in order for us to heal, we have to learn how to be with our body. There's no way around it. The only place we ever exist in any given moment is within our bodies. Here in the West, we are so conditioned to be stagnant and still. Or even when we do movement practices, let's say for yoga, they're very rigid, rudimentary shapes that don't allow for intuition to guide and lead the movement in response to what the body is raising, in response to what the body actually needs. So I invite you to just reflect on what your movement practices look like. Then from there, I invite you to think about how you might engage your community in movement, whether it's going for a morning walk with a friend or a family member, visiting a new place in your city and moving across space to call in new experiences. Dancing in front of the mirror and dance really like nobody is watching. Sometimes I dance like everybody's watching, but that's neither here nor there. Whichever works for you. And just begin to notice. I think the hardest part and the most significant part is the awareness. And when you start and get the ball rolling, we can keep the conversation going. So until then, I'll talk to you later.